Mr. Escobar, as we speak, there is an important meeting going on between Kosovo and Serbia's leader here in Ohrid. In the last few days, we've heard you speak about your hopes for the meetings. But what can you say are your realistic expectations for today?
Our highest expectation today is finalizing the implementation annex to a normalization agreement. This normalization agreement creates a peaceful, predictable, and friendly relationship between Serbia and Kosovo. But also, it opens the door for both of them to move faster into Euro-Atlantic structures. So, from our perspective, this is really historic. This is really an opportunity to move far beyond the events of the 90s and far beyond the events of the 1990s into the 21st century, for not just for Serbia and Kosovo, but for the region as a whole.
Have you met with both leaders today?
Not today, but I've met with them this week. So I just recently met with Prime Minister Kurti, and I'm hoping to meet with President Vučić later today.
Mr. Escobar, there's been a lot of pressure for this agreement to be concluded in the month of March. Why is this deadline so important?
Well, look, there's a lot of reasons. Number one, we have to recognize that we are operating in the shadow of one of the biggest security threats to the European continent since the Second World War. So for Europe to be prepared to meet security challenges, it should resolve all the security challenges that are inside of the continent of Europe. And this is one of the last remaining ones. So we need to consolidate not just peace, but consolidate the project of European Union expansion to all of the European continent. So this opens the door for that. And that's why right now is the best opportunity that we have to make sure that we can do that with a normalization agreement between some of the countries that still haven't made enough progress in Euro-Atlantic integration.
Prior to this meeting, we've seen a skepticism on both sides, and especially in Serbia's side. You've met with them. Has their stance softened in these days?
Well, look, the one thing about Serbia that I have to say is that President Vučić has started a real national conversation about what a future relationship between Serbia and Kosovo would look like. And I have to say that both sides are taking that responsibility seriously. So I do hope that we can get to a finalized annex on an agreement on normalization today.
Do you expect signage of a document today, especially from Serbia?
Well, look, we're not focused on signing. We're focusing on finalization. That is, getting a meeting of the minds that the two countries prepare for real discussions and a real reconciliation in their relationship. So that's more important, is the finalization of the annex.
Let's talk about the proposal itself for a little bit. It has been described as very beneficial for both countries,
yes,
especially Kosovo. Then again, it does not include mutual recognition. Do you think that this proposal can and will lead to mutual recognition? And what
it certainly opens the door to that. And look, my position, as I've stated repeatedly in both Kosovo and in Serbia, is that all the countries of the region should recognize each other and should have peaceful relations with each other. That this region is one of tremendous promise. And yet outside of the region, people believe that the Western Balkans are an area of conflict and ethnic tension. In reality, this would put to rest one of the last remaining disputes in the region and let the entire region take its place in Europe as the fastest growing part of Europe.
So you would say mutual recognition is an end goal to this?
It is for us.
It has to happen.
Well, I think it should happen. I think it should happen for all of the countries of the region. So I think there's no way, there's no path to Europe without all of the countries in the region recognizing each other and working well together with each other.
And what happens if Serbia refuses to reach to that?
Well, look, right now what we're asking of Serbia is to normalize the relationship with Kosovo. They're prepared to do that.
In a prior interview, you've said that you can't imagine why someone wouldn't agree with this deal. If that's the case, what happens if the parties fail to reach an agreement today or these days? Is there consequences?
Well, look, the consequences, to start with, is that we don't move forward on Euro-Atlantic integration. So for Kosovo, one of the consequences is that, that the European Union is expecting that they show the goodwill to be able to have a peaceful relationship with their biggest neighbor before they decide whether they're prepared to join, to get European Union candidacy. So that's a pretty big consequence. But beyond that, there are consequences to not having a peaceful relationship with your neighbors. So that's not a consequence that we're going to impose. That's just a natural fact that Kosovo needs a positive and a friendly and a peaceful relationship with Serbia.
And what about Serbia?
Well, same for Serbia. I mean, Serbia does have legally binding obligations to the European Union on Kosovo, on creating peaceful conditions in the region under its Chapter 35 requirements. So this would help move them in that direction.
The State Department Counselor, Mr. Sholet, yesterday mentioned high benefits for both countries if they reach an agreement. But can you tell us what those benefits could be?
Well, I'll start with the most important one. The biggest market for the Western Balkans is the European Union. And so what it does is it gives investors the confidence that the two countries are moving closer to that market. They are harmonizing their markets to the regulatory and legislative requirements of the European Union, and that any investment here in the Western Balkans ultimately is an investment in a European market. So that's the biggest one, and that's one that is a natural consequence of this. But there are other benefits. There are political benefits. It opens the door for both countries to move faster into European structures, particularly for Kosovo.
Have there been promises for investments from the U.S. or
Well, there have been
EU?
pledges to help them move forward in attracting private sector development, and we definitely are trying to do that, and we would definitely intensify that effort.
Let's talk about one of the issues most problematic for Kosovo's leadership, the ASM. Prime Minister Kurti has said that, has argued that if something doesn't start as Republikë Sërpska, it doesn't mean that it won't turn into one. How can the U.S. guarantee that the ASM would not turn into an autonomous institution?
Well, first of all, the association will be defined by its powers. It will be defined by statute. It will work under the Constitution of Kosovo within the legal structure of Kosovo. Additionally, what's most important is, as the two countries normalize, they're also harmonizing with European standards. So the European Union Special Rep, Miroslav Lajčák, has given them 16 models of similar arrangements inside of the European Union that haven't affected the functionality or the constitutionality of those countries. So there is a way forward to create a model for the association that doesn't create a Republikë Sërpska. In fact, it's highly unlikely that it would ever turn into a Republikë Sërpska.
Then again, we've seen that north has become a place, the north of Kosovo has become a place of high tensions. And
yes.
How do you think that the ASM can resolve this issue and contribute to a peaceful living together of the two communities?
Well, I think one of the most important things that it would do is it would create linkages between a population that occasionally feels isolated and marginalized and the central government. And we're talking really about municipal services. We're not talking about executive functions. We're talking about providing services to people in their own language, so that the association would take the services that are being provided to them by Serbia and put them under the legal framework of Kosovo. That's where it should be, and that's where it will be.
At the same time, there's a lot of parallel structures still in function in Kosovo. Would there be pressure for Serbia to stop the support to this parallel structure?
Absolutely, it's written in the agreement. So, we have to understand what some of the parallel structures are. So, in some cases, kindergartens and hospitals are considered parallel structures. Those institutions will be folded into the legal framework of Kosovo under the association, so that they're not run by Serbia, but they're run by Kosovo through the association.
And are financially supported by Serbia?
Well, there's a possibility for that. Yes, that Serbia could fund cultural and educational activities. Because let's remember that the people of the north are not just citizens of Kosovo, they're also citizens of Serbia. They're dual citizens, so they should be doubly advantaged, not doubly disadvantaged.
Kosovo and Serbia have reached almost 40 agreements prior to this meeting. Why do you think this agreement can be different in the sense of implementation? Because we've seen that most of the prior agreements lack implementation.
Well, look, I think part of that reality is why we're here today. That the lack of implementation of a lot of the agreements has led the European Union to conclude that we need a stronger framework. But we're also part of that, and the United States will also put its political credibility on the line to make sure that those agreements are carried out. And ultimately, I think the region is ready for a normalization agreement between Serbia and Kosovo.
So do you think specifically the EU and maybe the US as well have thought of a way to make sure that the leaders go through with this meeting,
We have.
with this agreement, and also can they pick and choose what they implement?
No, they cannot. There will be clear timelines and there will be clear expectations. I don't want to talk about the implementation mechanism. That's really for the European Union. But a lot of their integration will be conditioned on implementation.
Moreover, we're dealing with a raging war in Europe caused by Russia. Do you think this agreement can help push away Russia and its influence in the Balkans?
I would say yes, but I want to be clear. A lot of the problems of the Balkans are not caused by Russia. Now, Russia tries to make them worse, but these are existing issues that we have left unresolved for 30 years. So we have to look at that in that context, that we have to resolve the relationship between Serbia and Kosovo in order for the region to heal.
There have been arguments from Kosovo leadership that there hasn't been a real balanced pressure towards Serbia and Kosovo, from the EU at least, regarding the implementation, agreements, and all of that. At the same time, RFE has published an investigation that some Russian diplomats expelled from the EU, some of them allegedly involved in espionage, got accredited in Serbia. How do you comment on that and how the EU has dealt with this relation?
Well, I have to say that it's untrue that there has been unequal pressure. Both sides are under the same amount of pressure and are facing the same consequences if they don't move forward on this European plan. So it's very hard to see where someone would say that there hasn't been pressure on Serbia. And the key metric to gauge that is that they've agreed to normalization on European terms.
I'm going to go back to the deadline, the March. Do you think that even if the agreement does not happen today, we don't have a final agreement, how do you think it's going to affect the upcoming elections and the whole situation in the north right now that's going to happen in April?
Well, look, I think we'd like to see Serbs participate in elections. I do think that they have some concerns about how their representation would look. But I'm hopeful that after today we can have a renewed discussion with them about participation in the upcoming elections.
Finally, you've had talks with the opposition in Kosovo as well. Right now they've put out a stance that they don't fully agree with the European proposal. How do you comment on that?
Well, look, I think the one thing that they did make very clear is they also recognize the importance of today. They also recognize that even if we do have an agreement on normalization, the process of reconciliation is going to have to continue. So it'll continue long after today, but an agreement today will make that outcome, a positive outcome, more likely. So they agree with that, at least.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
Mr.
very
Escobar.
much.